Thank you all for joining us today. We're so glad to have you with us. This is the third and final meeting of our three-part series, Advancing Justice, Building Relationships. Today, in part 3, we'll focus on the future and together turn our efforts toward imagining the future of our ministry for justice. We'll have some time for prayer and conversation. We'll challenge ourselves to think beyond what is to what the future might hold and how we might shape our common ministry for justice. We'd like to begin our time this afternoon in prayer, as is our custom. So let me invite Regina to lead us in prayer. Regina?
Thank you. Good and gracious God, as we gather today in faith, we intentionally place ourselves, our time, and our work in your hands. We ask the Holy Spirit to be our guide and gift us with what we need in this moment as we dream. Help us find ways to continue the work of building your kingdom, a kingdom that gives glory and praise by providing systems and places where all humankind has what they need to live full lives of dignity, and where our environment is respected as a gift from you, our God. Help us in imagining justice.
No one is hungry, no payday loans. We want a living wage and affordable homes, a clean air and water, gardens to share. We're gonna keep working until we get there, dreaming a future, justice for all. What we do matters. Answer the call. All children safe, no guns at school, racism dismantled, and love is our fuel. Joyful resistance for the common good, every voice heard in all neighborhoods. Dreaming a future, a justice for all. What we do matters. Answer the call. Loving this planet, tending earth, beloved community coming to birth. Difference is treasured, everyone thrives, no stranger among us, and hope is alive. Dreaming a future, justice for all. What we do matters. Answer the call. Justice for all. What we do matters. Answer the call. Answer the call. Answer the call. Answer the call.
Amen.
And so we must ask yet again, in this world of chaos and uncertainty, in this world of challenge and opportunity, what is ours to do? So this afternoon, we'd like to continue our conversation about the future with just two simple, okay, maybe not so simple questions. First is, what do we see as we look at this world in which we live. What do we see now? What do we think we'll see as we move into the future? And then, what is God's call? What is the call of God's Spirit to us in this time and this place? What is ours to do? So those are the two questions that we're going to try to explore together this afternoon. And I want to begin by inviting my friends and co-conspirators to join me in conversation. So if we can get all of us spotlighted at one time, you'll see some of my friends. Mary Beth Ham, Coordinator of Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation for the International Congregation of Bon Secours. Regina O'Connor, who is the Justice Promoter for the Sisters of St. Anne, St. Marie Province. That's Donna Corba, and Donna is the Director of Justice and Peace for the Sisters Servants of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, Scranton, Pennsylvania. She may win the longest congregational name of the day. Reg McKillop, who's the Promoter of Peace and Justice for the Sinsinawa Dominicans. And John Shipley is the Coordinator of Justice and Peace and Integrity of Creation Office of the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth, who's giving Donna a run for her money on longest congregational name of the day. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining the conversation. Oh, I'm still missing a couple, but I don't see, where's Maria Elena? We're missing Maria Elena. Grace, find Maria Elena.
I'm working on it.
I thought we looked a little short on folk. So while we're waiting for Maria Elena to show up, Maria Elena Perales is the Justice Coordinator of the Sisters of St. Joseph from Orange, California. And she's a valued member of this group. And there she is. Okay, now I think that's all of us. So friends, welcome and thanks for your willingness to join this conversation. So let me begin really just by asking you to talk amongst yourselves, as they say, about that first question. As you look out into the world in which we minister now and in the future, what do you see? How would you describe the external environment in which we minister? And what does religious life look like from where you sit? What are the challenges? Where are the opportunities? So with that, I'll let you all have at it.
As I was just listening to you, Anne, one of the things that sort of hit me was the polarization that's happening around so many of the issues that we hold dear. There seems to be less and less of that middle ground and more of two warring sides almost. And so that ground where we work in the middle is becoming more and more desert.
Mm-hmm. That makes.
I'm wondering, Regina and friends, about that division. I'm just thinking that in our world of kind of egoistic, consumerism, but I'm looking at the benefits of technology like we have here, but also the misuse. And in the misuse, I think that the whole concept of relationships diminishes. And I think relationship is such a vital part of not only life, but of anything we discuss as an issue. And when we use technology to almost undo relationships, it becomes a mechanical thing. It becomes easy to demonize someone else. Instead of sitting down in relationship, I think that's one of the challenges of our time, is restoring relationships with each other, with earth, with all.
Yeah, it is pretty significant with this polarization that has occurred. I think
as Donna, as you bring up, I think that I've never seen where relationships have been broken, family relationships, friends relationships, over some of these political issues around, well, basically it started with President Trump, where they're actually, you can't sit at the same table sometimes. So can you imagine, as you said, Regina, to try to bring it to that middle is almost, it seems almost impossible. And to begin to foster those relationships again, it seems it's just so sad to see how that is all broken down. And you're right, social media has played a major part in that as well. It's pretty difficult.
I think what y'all friends have mentioned is true. We also have to think about what can I do as, for example, myself? What is it that I can do to heal some of those relationships? And I think one of the first things that I think about is, how can I respect the other person's perspective, even if I don't agree with his or her perspective? Because they too hold the truth, like I hold my truth. And just because they don't think the same way I do doesn't mean they're wrong. And it's just very hard to be able to, you don't have to agree, but we do have to respect the other perspective and have that communication with the person. The person comes before anything else. Our relationships, our friendships come before, and respecting that, and then trying to see from their own perspective, because unless we walk in the other person's shoes, we don't know where they're coming from. And the same way for us as well.
There's almost like a lack of, have forgotten how to listen, to truly listen. And it seems to be about, I want to get my point across. But when I learned to really truly listen to the other, I realized that differences happen, but that dignity of the person should never be diminished.
There's an empathy missing. You know, when we allow social media and things to be the way we gather information, the experiential's not there, and there's an empathy. So we're listening, but what messages are we listening to? And we're listening through a device, not face to face.
As I think about, what I see, and I think this partisanship and this lack of encounters is part of a deeper sense of what I think we're going to see, which is, less cooperation, less functional government or society. And I'm not going to jump ahead here because I have a tendency to do that. But I think one of the questions it forces me to think about is, in the absence of functioning government or functioning society, what's our role to play in building community and building trust and building relationship? The other thing, that I just know is on my horizon and my radar every time I think about it is climate and what the world is even going to look like in 10, 15 years. The horizons, the speed at which we're experiencing some of these challenges is even faster than we predicted 10 or 20 years ago. So I have a hard time imagining, and it fills me with fear and hope about what the future could look like.
John, I agree. I think the rapidity of change is unbelievable. We can't even wrap our heads around the amount of change that has happened in the last 10 years. And we're talking about change that is going to continue exponentially greater in the next 10 years in all of our religious congregations, as well as in the world in general. We know that in the United States, looking ahead, soon those of us who are white are going to be in the minority. So we're dealing with a tremendous demographic change. And at the same time, we're dealing with racism. our original sin, you know, and we put those two together. We know that climate change is going to escalate, which will mean forced migration will be escalating. And so everything that we are dealing with, I think all of the issues that we are dealing with right now are going to escalate even further in even 10 years. And I wonder, you know, I have a lot of wonderments. I wonder at the root of all of this, you know, we're used to looking at the root causes of difficulties. And I wonder if sometimes the root causes are even deeper. The root causes are greed and apathy and fear and anxiety, and what we might be able to do to address those kinds of causes, which creates the other that we talked about, all the polarization. There's so much them and us. And how do we become an us?
Just going back, Mary Beth, to your point and John's point about how things are rapidly changing, and you mentioned religious communities, that's really going to affect, I mean, not to jump ahead as what is ours to do, but the reality of religious life and the changes, the diminishment of religious life is really having, it seems to be that conversation of what's our future and how do we respond. It's really going to be affected. It's really going to affect possibly the world of justice in a sense of how do we respond to all of this and that reality that we really have to face as things are changing in religious life so quickly.
Well, we're really becoming a reactive, not proactive society, because things, I mean, not that we haven't been in the past, but things are changing so quickly that we're not catching our breath to be proactive. So maybe for us, as we look at dreaming ahead, it could be, how do we be proactive?
So we're describing a world here, or an environment in which we live and move, of rapid and profound change, characterized in large part by broken relationships, whether those are broken relationships amongst human beings or our own relationship with Earth. We're looking at existential threats. Okay. Welcome to our world. Where do you see opportunity in that? And I don't want to move to the second question yet. You're all being very good about not getting ahead of yourselves. But if we just dive a little deeper into what you see, is there opportunity in the challenges which you've laid out, I think, very well? Do you see opportunity in those challenges?
I wanted to say something, and based on the conversation we've had so far, when I think about the divisions that are out there, it seems like what we're talking about is a lot of it is political.
Yeah, I'm curious about who just made that comment, because we can't see you.
I have unmuted myself. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can, and I'm happy to hear your comment. We weren't planning on inviting people into the conversation quite yet.
Oh,
but
okay.
Could you just tell us, since it's a wonderful comment, and
well, I just because of
who are you?
I'm Sister Marion Stern from Victoria, Texas.
I know Marion Stern from Victoria, Texas. So thank you for that comment.
Okay, because of the political aspect, I see that it happened. And as I listen to people on the political level, I often think maybe we need to, and maybe I'm moving to think about values. What do we value to really get down to the values? And I think some of the things you said about the fear and the root of all of these things that are happening is to help people to talk about what they value. And I look at the whole area of evangelization too, of helping people to talk about that, to talk about what they value. And maybe in talking about what we value, we can begin to see where maybe we're not quite at the point we should be, and need to look at something else, to be challenged, to change in some way. Anyway, those are just thoughts, and maybe I'm too far ahead too.
Yeah, no, thank you for those thoughts. And I'll throw those thoughts back to my panelists and ask them to talk a little bit more about how you see values playing into this whole thing. Is that really where one of the opportunities might lie?
I think that's a key opportunity for us. I think by the way women religious live in the world, I think we also bring the fact that we live in community. So there's a deep understanding of what it means to be community. And that's a piece that's sort of been lost. And we see that all around us. I mean, I'm a lay woman working with women religious, but as a lay woman, we see we can't get volunteers for anything. No one wants to come to meetings. Nobody wants to join in a joint effort, or very few. And they seem to be, when there is a mass that joins, it is a very emotional group. I don't know, that's just my look. So I think women religious can bring that other piece to it.
Yeah, thank you.
I am wondering if those of us in religious congregations, if we think of our founders and our foundresses, and I bet you they are just smiling in heaven, just so excited about what comes next. I bet you if we look at our charisms, that we probably have a lot more in common than we think. And I would imagine the word passionate love somewhere is there. And I'm wondering if this isn't a call for a unified voice, a bold unified voice, an unafraid unified voice, to really get down to the basics of who we are, the essence of who we are. And that certainly includes the men. But I'm wondering, I'm thinking, whether it's Francis or Dominic or Benedict or Teresa Maxis or whomever, I'm wondering if this is not an opportunity as we grow smaller in religious congregations, as we struggle with justice issues, if it is not a call to really form a unified voice based on the essence of who we say we are, where we began. I wonder if it's not circular, really, and a call back. I'm thinking of last year, our very first Justice Conference, we had Valerie Kerr, and her message was revolutionary love. And I'm wondering if we should not go back. I have my notes here. I think she had a message for us that I don't know if we captured and held and really maybe need to look at that. Yeah.
Donna, thanks for saying that. I remember how inspiring Valerie Carr was, and many of us on this Zoom heard her. And, I think it helps sometimes, we talk about the challenges in the world, but I wonder if we looked at this time as a green space for growth. Even as we know we're diminishing in one way, we're not diminishing in another way. We are more graced than we have ever been. We have more wisdom than we have ever had collectively. And I wonder, how we can, garner all that collective congregational wisdom, look at our charisms, as a prism reflecting all the different charisms. And Donna, I agree, how we might be able to work together as a body of congregations as we look to the future. I think, Regina, going back, I agree with you, the values. We have a little niche as congregations of women religious. We are highly respected by people of many faiths and no faith. We have that contemplative dimension of our lives, which is central to who we are. And I think that focus for us is a value that we have a niche for. That's our niche. That is what we can contribute to many, many other organizations and groups who are also passionate about justice, passionate about building the beloved community. So I just wonder if we can look at this time as a time of green space for growth and dreaming.
No, let's not forget.
Oh, go ahead, Maria.
Sorry, John. I just wanted to remind us, let's not forget, yes, to your point, Donna and Mary Beth, we're already doing the collaboration. We're already in the partnership. All of us, the way we do our work is by doing a collective of organizations that, for example, on immigration, who do we work with? Which are the organizations that we pair up with to move, to advocate, to organize, to educate? We're doing that already. I think we just need to be more intentional how we're doing. And we need, yes, to your point, we need to create a structure that is a permanent structure. Yes, with congregations, but also with nonprofits, with other faiths, with other people that are already doing the work. Imagine the force, what a mighty force we could be if we were to, all of us, move down that path and be more intentional.
Thank you, Maria Elena. And I just want to echo some of what I'm hearing. This conversation about charism and the way that the charisms rhyme, but also I think realizing that as gospel people, all of us are called to this mystical prophetic tradition and the sisters, at least in my experience, have lived it out so clearly and so intentionally, and to be that model for the world and the church moving forward. I mean, I don't see it happening anywhere else. And so just how do we carry that charism as well as our charisms, our individual charisms, into the future? And then, as you all have mentioned, the idea of collaboration, and we already are collaborating. And I know we've talked about collaborating a lot over the past decade, and I've not been here for those conversations, but I'm really wondering if collaboration is the right word anymore. Is it transformation? Is it evolution? Is it something even beyond what we've done to this point?
I'm just getting out of religious life for a minute, and going back to the values question. I think a thing that is really important to remember is everybody, I think we have, looking at our world, people value the same thing. They value their family, they value a good life, they value being able to live. And I think that what has happened, and maybe this is an opportunity of connecting with the idea that everybody, basically, we do value the same things: safety for our family, a good life, and a way to make a living, our kids to be able to be safe. But in some way, I think it's been turned around, and Mary Beth, you kind of alluded this idea of fear, that if there's some way when we talk about values to really understand that, generally speaking, everyone holds that same value, but the fear that has been driven into them through, I think, social media, through political leaders, through this idea of we now have to tell people what to do, the kind of dictator type authoritarian governments that is happening around the world, that they think they've got to tell people that because people are afraid. And I think to also be aware of the fear that underlies of a lot of this, but at the same time, that people really do value the same things. And if there's some way, an opportunity to bring that out more than the fear, that may be helpful. But
As I'm listening to you, Reg, and to John, maybe collaboration isn't the right word. Maybe communion is. Maybe it's about building that communion, that unity of voice, that unity of experience in such a way that it brings people together. We collaborate. Well, that's good. I listen to you and you listen to me, and I'll put my name on your thing and you put your name on mine. That's collaboration. I think of communion being more intimate than that. And that's something from our faith tradition, from that we know very well. And maybe that's something that we can really bring forth and use as a driving, instead of just looking for collaboration, let's look for communion in our work and in the world.
That word communion, I'm thinking of a phrase that I really invented for myself to help me focus. And it's a lifelong challenge, but it's on the bottom of my my emails. It's my signature. And I think for me, what helps me somewhat, and I don't know if it makes any sense to anybody else, but as a Catholic Christian, to see the world with the eyes of God and to try to live in the world with the heart of Jesus. And I think for myself to ask that, how does God see the world? How does God see this situation? And it goes back to that base of contemplative prayer. How does God see the one I call enemy, or the one I don't agree with? How does God see anything? And how can I move just a little bit more in the direction of how God sees and how I respond with the way Jesus would have responded? That's pretty profound. It's kind of I don't know if I want to say a goal, but for me, that is something helpful when looking at the world, when looking at justice. And I certainly fall short, but it's one of those, something that helps me to try to sort it all out and to try to be with. I think presence is everything.
I don't want to cut this conversation short because it's so rich. And still, I want to make sure that you've all had a chance to really think about what's your dream for the future of our ministry. Let's just think about that for a second. And I'll ask each of you panelists to who want to respond. If you had to try to encapsulate something so rich and deep and wide and high as our ministry for justice, what's your dream for the future? Let's think about that. And then if anybody has any last things to add before we move into small group discussion, I'll let you add that.
Is it our dream as much as how do we reach or move towards that dream? The song was my dream for the future.
What would our ministry look
how do we get there is
that's
more
the hard question, I suppose.
That's the hard, yeah.
Thanks. Anybody else have a final thought before we open this conversation more widely?
I just think we have to find, I don't know if it's more or better ways to actually bring our voices together in the public square. And not only our voices together, but as Maria Elena keeps reminding us, the voices of those other groups, whether it be interfaith or groups that specialize in an area of justice that we are working with. But how do we bring our voices together in a way that brings about change, and not leave people like, how do we do it in a way that just keeps the circle keeps opening bigger and bigger and bigger? That would be my dream, to be able to somehow find a way that the circle keeps expanding. It's like a flood. You know, a flood lets nothing stand in its way, and once it's flowing, it flows. Where's the flood?
Thanks.
I don't have an answer, Anne, but there's a question that keeps coming to me, and questions will show us the way, as Margaret Wheatley says. You know, I keep thinking for most of us, I think we started out as religious congregations very much involved in direct service to people. You know, that was through education or healthcare or social services. And, you know, about 50 years ago, when Network was founded after Vatican II, and Pax Christi International was founded, and Interfaith Center for Corporate Responsibility was founded, we got very much involved in advocacy, working for systemic change. We didn't let go of the direct service, but we kept the direct service and we embraced that. I wonder what the next iteration of justice is for women religious. That question keeps coming to me. What is the next piece of it? Not that we're going to let the other direct service or advocacy go, but is there something wanting to come to birth? So I just put that question out there. I don't have an answer.
It's a great question. It's a great question. Answered? No.
Oh. Yeah,
Well,
go ahead, John.
I won't take too long because I don't have an answer to your question either. But it could look like, or it could be, in the wake of healthy and strong local communities doing the kind of organizing that creates community on the local level, you know, going back to the roots. It's almost like a direct service, but different.
But along that, I was thinking that as women religious, maybe our responsibility is to mentor a younger generation that is coming. That I don't mean train them, but kind of mentor the youth who really seem to be very involved. And how can we help foster that and allow it, you know, step back, but maybe through financial aid or mentoring that movement can gain strength and make
And
it
in that same light, how do we make space? How do we make room for those who are most impacted? Those folks who suffer inordinately because of my privilege. How do we make space for them to, and that I think we have the power to do. We have the power to open the space so that people can speak in their own voice.
Yeah.
And possibly going to them, not expecting them to come to us.
Yeah.
Or saying, oh, I'll have this symposium so we can invite the young people to join us, going to them and asking them, what are your worries? What is it that you want to do? How do you want to be involved? What is affecting you and your family? Listening to what they have to say and what they think ought to be done and how we can collaborate, empowering them to make it happen, as opposed to doing it for them or thinking that this is what they need, but keep listening to them and hearing their needs.
And that kind of feeds into what John had just said about the local areas, local communities.
Well, my friends, I think we really do have to leave our part there. Thank you so much for your willingness to share your own experience, to share your insights, to share your wisdom and your dreamings and your wonderings and your questions, because that's all we've got at this point is questions, dreams, and wonderings. So thank you, each and every one of you. Now it's time for us to give everybody a chance to join the conversation. We're going to invite each of you to join a small group to look to deepen the conversation to look a little more closely at the future and the future of our common ministry for justice. We've got about 20 minutes, I think. Yeah, at least 20 minutes. Maybe we could even go 25 minutes to have that conversation in small group. So with that as a backdrop, I want to invite you into small groups for a discussion about our common future. And there are some possible questions on the screen. How will we carry the prophetic social mission of religious life into the future? How might we reimagine, rethink, restructure our ministry for justice? That's where you might begin your conversation. I'm sure it's not where your conversation will end. And to help facilitate that, each of the 7 of us will be joining one of those groups to just kind of take some notes. We'll take some notes on the conversation so that the wisdom is not lost, and also facilitate her as necessary. Okay. So with that, let me ask Grace if she would please send us into the wherever she sends us. So we're back. We're almost back. We're coming back to large group. Grace, you think everybody's back?
Yes, everyone's back.
Well, then let me welcome everybody who's back to our large group. I'm sure your conversation was as rich as the conversation I was gifted to be part of. So what I'd invite us to now is a little quiet time. There have been lots and lots and lots of words. And I thought it might be well just to take some time of silence to gather our thoughts. Think about what really struck you in the conversation in your small group, or in the conversation that you eavesdropped on earlier. And think about, if you can, is there one thing of the many important things you heard, one thing that you think most important to share with the larger group? So I'm going to give you time first just to think about that, and then we'll take the next step as it comes. Okay, so let me give you a couple of minutes of silence. And now, if I might, I'd invite you to write one small bit of wisdom that you garnered this afternoon. Write that in the chat. We'll copy the posts and include them when we send you the link to this broadcast. So if you have one piece of wisdom from your own heart or from the heart of another, just add that to the chat, please. I'm just following the wisdom as it rolls through the chat. It's beautiful. Thank you all so much. So thank you. Please continue to add those to the chat. And let me invite you also to share aloud if you'd like. I think we have time. We have about 5 minutes, 7 minutes to hear a few comments from the larger group. So if you would like to add your voice to the conversation, please use the raise hand function, which should be at the bottom of your screen in that lower tray of Zoom. Just raise your hand and I should be able to see you in the order that you raise your hands. So if anybody would like to share a thought, just raise your virtual hand so that I can see it. And we'll give you the floor. So Catherine, my old friend, Catherine Darcy.
I don't have a statement, but I do have a question. And how are you going, maybe you don't know the answer to this yet because it's an unfolding process. But first of all, thank you for your service, numero uno. Tremendous service you've been over many years. But secondly, how are you moving forward to leadership with some of these notions, some of these ideas? And you may, and as I say, you may have more planning to do before you can answer that.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. I do know that this is one of a number of conversations that have been ongoing, primarily among justice promoters, though somewhat in leadership. And we've kind of got a parallel conversation going on with leadership, talking about governance particularly. But justice, of course, has to be part of that conversation as well. So I would encourage all of you, and we're gathering these notes, and I will leave them with my fearless leader, Carol Zinn. And I would encourage all of you to schedule a conversation in the near future with your own leadership team and talk about how we're taking this into the future. What is the congregational vision, and how are they beginning to think cross-congregationally or across borders of whatever kinds about how we're going to continue to do our ministry of participating in God's mission to bring all to oneness in Jesus. So yeah, I think it would be appropriate for justice promoters to have that kind of a conversation
Okay.
with their
Thanks.
leadership teams.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Ann.
Thank you. Anybody else with a question that's easier than Catherine's?
Well, and just to speaking from a justice person and a leader, those conversations really have to be ongoing and sort of integral. I mean, we're in this together, and so don't just schedule one, schedule regularly.
Thanks, Gemma. And thanks for straddling those worlds. They're not separate from each other, really, but
No, not at all.
so talk to yourself, I'm just saying. Anyone else before we kind of draw our conversation to a close?
Regina, is your hand up? Yeah.
Regina's hand is up. Look at that virtual hand. Now you have to unmute
I
yourself.
did. I am muted now. This wasn't, I didn't say this, but someone in my group did. And they just want to remind us that really some of it's our language, that we talk about justice as a ministry, and maybe we should be looking justice as the lens through which all ministry happens. And that we need to begin by maybe looking at our language there. And if we did that, it would automatically include leadership would have to be part of that conversation.
Yep. Yep, you are so right. Thank you.
Not me, someone in my group.
Thank that someone in your group.
I just want to break in that I saw a breaking news from the New York Times that 14 children have been killed in a school. It just popped in. So
Where?
I didn't get it. It just popped in very, very quickly.
Texas.
Texas.
It happened in Texas.
So
Maurice is on this call and he knows about it. So Maurice Lang.
Just before the call, we were hearing sirens go right down the road. I'm in Castroville, Texas, which is just west of San Antonio. And I told my wife something's going on and we couldn't find it on the internet, but we tuned into the news and it's just down the road from us in Uvalde, Texas. But when I got on this call, they weren't releasing the tragic numbers, but somebody just said in our small group that 14 children were killed.
Let's just take a moment, huh? And remember those children, remember their families, their communities. Ask God to hold all of them. There is no way to explain it. So maybe now is as good a time as any to draw this to a conclusion. Bearing in mind that we live in a world that is both graced and challenged. And just to add that goodness that we are, that God is, into our world every single day is the greatest gift we can do. And with that, let me thank the steering committee for their work on this final session and the whole series. We could not have done this without the commitment and the wisdom of each of those steering committee members. So thank you, Mary Beth, Reg, Sarah in absentia, Dorothy in absentia, John, Donna, Maria Elena, and Regina. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then, of course, as always, a special thanks to our production staff. Grace for her technology expertise, for getting us through this webinar one more time. Jennifer for handling all of the registration. And of course, all of you for your willingness to share your hopes and dreams with us. We walk this road together. It's the only way we could do it. And finally, please plan to join us for our spring 2023 JCWR convocation. We hopefully will meet in person. We can't wait to see each of you in 3 dimensions. Stay tuned for details. We don't have dates, places, times, or presenters, but we would welcome any suggestions that you would have. So again, thank you for sharing your time with us this afternoon. It's a precious gift to be able to walk this road with each of you. So thank you very much. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Anne. Your leadership. We'll miss you.
Bye.